with Mr. Darrell Hudspeth. We are at his home on Lake Norman, and today is June the 15th, 2007. We thank you, Mr. Hudspeth, for allowing us to come and interview you, and we know that you grew up in Mooresville and lived in the Mill Village and then became a pilot for Eastern Airlines. So we'll start with your telling us about your life growing up in the Mill Village in Mooresville.
Well, I was born May the 18th, 1925, and I was born at home on 219 College Street, just north of the mill. And from there we moved to what they used to call the Picnic Woods, and that was Caldwell Street, I believe. Anyway, 330 Caldwell Street.
Why was it called the Picnic Woods?
Well, at the end of the road was Mr. Edmondson, the electrician, lived at the end of the road across from us. And Mr. Mann lived just just west of us. At the end of the road was an area that was wooded, and they used it for the mill picnics. And they had some, it was cleared out, and it was a nice, cool place in the summertime to have a picnic or get together.
Okay, great. All right, go ahead.
And we kept moving around for some reason or other, and I lived on Summer Street, 554 Summer Street, and I lived at Spruce Street, 614 Spruce Street, and I still don't know why we moved around so many times. The houses weren't that much different. Sometimes they had one more room, and maybe that was the reason.
Can you tell us, to describe these houses, what you remember about the houses you lived in?
Well, there were 3 or 4 bedrooms, mostly just a square walk into the living room with a bedroom off to the right, and another bedroom straight ahead from the living room, and to the other side of that was a kitchen, and they had the bathroom was on the outside. We didn't have really a bathroom, just had a toilet. It was not heated, and a screen porch was attached to the screen porch. And we had an old wood stove to start with in the kitchen. It kept things warm pretty well. And we had fireplace heat, and we bought coal from the mill to heat the houses. Later on, they graduated to oil circulator heater, which made it a little bit more comfortable. Houses were more or less alike. They're just different locations. Some were higher off the ground than others.
And I've been told that there were quite a few grocery stores down in the Mill Village area.
Well, our grocery store, I remember growing up, was Mr. Kelly Sherrill, across on Broad Street, right at almost to the town city limits at that time.
And was Mr. Stonestreet's cafe there?
Oh, Mr. Stonestreet. Stonestreet had a grocery store, I think, even before Mr. Kelly Sherrill. And O.C. Stonestreet had a cafe, and we had a barber shop. My first memory is the train filling up that front store window when I was sitting in a barber chair and scaring the daylights out of me.
Okay. Anything else you want to recall about living there?
There was a small grocery store where Brandon's Cleaners is located now. And I can't remember the name of that. And later on there was
the front. You used to talk about the front.
That's where the
That's what they call it, the front.
That's what they called it, the front. Yes, but at the end of the mill.
And of course, you attended school, Mooresville schools. Do you remember anything in particular about attending Mooresville schools?
I remember first year, and I lived right down at the end of Church Street. Church ends right into the mill entrance, and I remember walking up that road, no sidewalks, it's not paved, and it was cinders. The main thing I remember is falling down and skinning my knees in my short pants in the summer. Cinders cutting into my knees. Mm-hmm. I remember one other thing, very clear in my mind even today, is the First Baptist Church when it burned down. We lived on it just maybe less than half a mile from there, and it lit up the sky from all around.
Was it during the day or at night?
I believe it was at night, but my impression was now that it was at night.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure about that.
Mm-hmm. And that was on the corner where the present Baptist Church is located.
Yes. I don't know how old I was, but I was very young.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you thought that was funny at the time. I don't know if that.
Oh, I was going to remember that in the picnic woods, and some of the woods around the mill village on the other side, Mr. White's pasture. I remember some of the men from the town, the Mill Hill, would on the weekends go over to the woods and play cards, and probably had a little sip or two. Mm-hmm. And that was the talk of the town then. Mm-hmm. For those people who were so strictly against playing cards and drinking too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you went on through high school, and you told me that you did not graduate from high school, but that you joined the Army Air Corps.
I did.
And how old were you then?
I was 17 when I joined, and I went on active duty in June after my birthday on May the 18th, and that was 1943.
Mm-hmm. So that was during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any particular experiences of the war that you would like to share with us?
No, it was right at the last of the war before I got into combat, and I only picked up 19 missions flying over from France into Germany. Mm-hmm. And the war was dying down at that time, and so it was fairly quiet. We were shot at a couple of times by fighter planes, and we saw a lot of flak, but I was never had a hit, hole in the airplane. Or
where were you stationed?
I was in Dijon, France, then in Dole, France, as we progressed on over into Germany. The war was pushing the Germans back across the border.
Mm-hmm. And then when you came home back to the U.S. after the war, I'm sure that was a happy time.
I was. I didn't have enough points to come home right away, so I went to flying a C-47 with air transport systems flying around Europe for a short time, and then I went on temporary duty with Gray's registration and traveled by jeep and trailer around over Holland, Belgium, down into Germany, all over France, and
did you see, when you were doing that, did you see a lot of damage from the war as you were traveling?
Quite
around?
a bit, more in Germany than any other place. Of course, there was a lot of damage in France, but there was more in Germany. I was in Nuremberg and several other places where it was really toned up pretty bad.
Mm-hmm. So after a while you came back home?
I did, and I came home in the fall of 1946, I believe. Yeah, 46. And my terminal leave was up early the next year. So I joined the reserve. I didn't do any flying or anything active. I was active with the Civil Air Patrol for a while. And then I started a job as flight instructor. I worked in Charlotte for Mr. Ed Brockenborough and operated an airport in Moxville under the GI Bill of Rights. We had some private pilot licenses. And I don't know, I was over there a year or two. And then the cadet program, our Air Force cadet program, was getting pretty active, and there was a job opening in Kinston, North Carolina. I went down there as a flight instructor. And I was there about 3.5 years until 1951, I guess. From 51 until 55. And then I went with Eastern.
And you finished out the rest of your career with Eastern Airlines?
I was 60 and 85 and it was mandatory retirement, so I took my retirement. And we moved from, no, I was still in Mooresville when I retired. But we moved to the lake in 80 and built the house.
Well, what can you share some of the experiences you had flying? Because you kind of grew up with the development of Eastern Airlines, did you not?
I did. They were flying DC-3s, which is the old Air Corps C-47. It's a civilian version, and they just stopped using those airplanes, and they came out with a twin-engine passenger plane. It's Martin 404, and so I started flying as co-pilot on the Martin 404, and later on the Convair 440. And after about 4 years, I was promoted to captain, and on the Martin and the Convair. And they started flying the Lockheed Electra, and I flew that for several years until they phased it out. And the rest of the time, I flew the Douglas DC-9, and I accumulated over a period of time from my Air Force and flight instructing and Eastern time, about 30,000 hours total.
It's a lot of flying. A lot of flying.
A lot of time.
Yeah. So after, I guess the commercial airlines were just kind of beginning to become popular or to develop at the time that you went in after the war.
Right.
And what were some of the, aside from the fact that the jets came in and the planes got bigger, what were some other developments within the airline industry that you experienced?
Well, they developed a lot in the electronics and the navigational equipment, more than anything else I can think of. It became a little bit more sophisticated and a lot easier to fly in real instrument weather. When I first started flying, you couldn't land or descend below 500 feet on an instrument approach, not legally. And then later on, by the time I finished, you could fly the airplane right on down to the ground as long as you just on automotive autopilot. It would fly itself right on and land. And all you had to do is reduce the power and land. Just let it do itself. But I don't know how much they've advanced since that time.
What about airports? What kind of service would Eastern have, say, from Charlotte?
I don't remember exactly. They didn't have too much, and the terminal was an old Army prefab, I believe, when I first remember the airline in Charlotte. And
certainly no jetways.
Oh no jetways. It was simply walk out to the airplane and climb up the steps to get in. And it was quite a bit of difference.
So, anything else that you would like to share with us about growing up in Mooresville?
No, we had it pretty easy, I think. We were never hungry, but some people were, I think.
Both of your parents worked in the mill?
My mother didn't. She worked a little bit, but never in a very long period of time. My dad was a loom fixer, and he later retired from the mill and opened up a shop, television, radio first, and then television repair.
She's giving you a note. She said, thought of something she wants you to talk about.
Oh, I worked with Hugh and Webb McLean after school when I was in school. I remember that. And the movie was across the street. I can't think of the state, I think. And
now, so when you worked, now I'm going back because my husband worked with Hugh and Webb McLean.
Really?
But now they were up further north on Main Street when he
a little
did.
bit, yes.
You worked with them when they were downtown.
That's right.
Right in the middle of town.
Right. And they were right beside of the cafe. What's the name of that? City Cafe?
I think, yes.
And
the Carolina Theater was across the street.
I think it was the State. The Carolina, I think, was the other. I'm not real sure. I think it was the State. And there was a soda shop right there, John Archer.
Yes.
And he's pretty wide. And we'd sit in a small booth and have a Coke, and hot dog was $5. I think the hamburger was 10 cents.
And so McLean's Supermarket then was right there in town, and people just walked to town and got their groceries.
That's right. Yeah, it was not a supermarket at that time. You went in
grocery store.
Went in. You asked them what you wanted, and we'd go fill out their order. And I remember on Friday morning they'd get the fish in, and we'd take the old fish out of the ice and put it into the counter, display counter, and we'd slice up the mackerel, and then we'd have to clean up on Saturday night, and we usually work until almost time for the late movie across the street, cleaning up after closing hours.
Do you have any other memories of other places in town that you would go to when you were in town?
Well, I remember the skating rink, and I remember Brown swimming pool and the skating rink out there. And I don't think I even went out there until I learned to drive.
Probably did, because it was a long way from town.
Long way from town, yes.
And do you recall any other stores that were downtown?
Oh, I remember Mar Brothers. I remember the furniture store on the corner.
People's.
And I remember the McGraw grocery store right now where the shoe shop is now. Quick Low. And I remember Joe Crooks was a good friend. I remember his shop for years and years. There was a First and Last Chance Grocery, I think, was on the corner of Statesville Avenue in Maine, right to where the old Harris Teeter.
Mr. Honeycutt's store.
Right up on the corner. And that was the end of town then. And I had an uncle that lived out just beyond the city limits. Vernon Sherrill, Gilbert's daddy, Gilbert and Dorothy's daddy. And that was out of town.
What kind of vehicles did your parents have when you were growing up?
We lived in Mount Morn for a short time, out west of what they used to call that Beatty's Ford Road. What's the name of it now? Going out to the new section.
Langtree Road.
Langtree. We rented a little house out there for a year, and I remember playing in the woods when I was 12 or 13, and climbing up a tree with my young brother with me, and I fell out of the tree and twisted my ankle, and I tried to get him to go get somebody to help me. I couldn't walk, so he went over, finally, after I threatened him, went over to Mr. Freeze, and he carried me out piggyback and took me in his Model A Ford up to the hospital to get my ankle treated. And then it was in the hot summertime, and I remember lying on a cot or a bed in the summertime with the breeze through the windows and without a sheet or anything, because even the pressure of a sheet would hurt.
Do you remember who the doctor was that treated you?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I was delivered by Dr. Sloan on College Street.
So that at that time, that was the old Lawrence Hospital on
Yes.
Center Avenue, or was it on Center Street? Was it on?
It was on it where it was located later.
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of help.
Yes, you are.
Oh, I do remember. Yeah, my dad belonged to the town of Morsel Mill Band.
Oh,
We
wow.
have a picture of that somewhere.
Yeah, I have a
And I think Mr. Tom Hill was the director of the band. And I remember the two Etchison boys, and I can't recall all the other members of the band, but I'd go and sit there with Pop and listen.
Okay, so now, when I know that the band would perform at the picnics.
Yes.
And were there parades that the band would march in?
I think so. I don't remember exactly any time that I remember one. I mean, I don't remember one. But they did perform at functions around town.
And did you, when you lived down in the Mill Village, did you go to the community house?
Yes, we did.
And what did you do at the community house?
Well, they had boxing. I didn't do much of that, but they played ping pong, and they had picnics there. I don't know what all. But it was a place you could go just to get away from the house.
Wasn't there a daycare also?
I don't remember.
I don't remember that. Okay. All right. Ms. Hudspeth, you think of anything else we need to talk about? You can tell us. You don't have to write it.
I don't think. That's not there.
Oh, yeah, John McLean. John McLean was a cousin. He worked for Hugh and Webb at the same time I did. I worked after school on Saturdays, and he later ran the city grocery down below town. He was there a long time.
I always think of him as the meat man. He
Yes,
was the meat cutter.
he was. Mr. Stone Street used to help him in there too. Not Mr. Stone Street, Mr. Cashion.
Mr. Cash.
Had worked for Stone Street, I think, earlier. And he helped John cut meat on weekends. I remember another family, Mr. Jim Lee Harris and his wife, lived there right beside the community house. And I also worked there for her, doing little jobs around the house, cleaning and little electrical work on simple things that she needed, carrying in coal and wood. And she had a cow back there, and I'd always have a half a gallon of buttermilk, I think, about every weekend, sweet milk and buttermilk. And I think she had some chickens too, right there in town.
That's okay. I don't like it.
Okay. Well, you know, life back then was quite simple. But as you said, you felt like that you pretty much had a good life.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate your interview and appreciate you telling us all about it. Ms. Hudspeth, have you thought of something else we need to talk about?
I was going to tell him that the big white house is now the lawyer's office.
Yes.
It was Miss Jim Lee's house.
Yes,
I thought you
right,
might
that's
go
right.
there
Yeah,
as well.
Mr. Harris's
The big old
house
house is still there.
is now the attorney's
Right.
office, right beside
The community
the
house
library.
was
The
right
community
beside
house
that.
was torn down, was it
Right,
not?
yes.
Yeah, what a shame. Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Does anybody ever...
Mr. Hudspeth just remembered another story he wants to tell us about the milkman.
We had a Mr. Elliott in a Model T Ford truck with oilcloth sides to keep out the rain. He'd come around every weekend and deliver buttermilk and milk and eggs from his farm. And my mother would make biscuits 3 times a day, I believe, and we end up with a flour sack full of leftover stale biscuits, and we'd sell those to Mr. Elliott for a nickel or a dime, depending on how many we had, and had a little spending money.
So what did he use those biscuits for? To feed to his...
Feed the hogs.
Feed the hogs, yeah. Okay. Well, that was a good deal.
That was a good deal for me.
A nickel or a dime could buy a lot of
It
penny
could.
candy.
Oh my, it could, yes.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. Thank you.
Thank you.